At my sister's housewarming, I carried in the $9,000 furniture set she'd begged me to cover. She looked around at her guests and snapped, "Put it down and leave. Nobody wants you in the photos." I set the receipt on the counter, turned around, and walked out. By breakfast, she was calling Mom in tears. Right after the truck came back. Hey everyone, quick favor before we get into today's story. We've seen a bit of a drop in the channel lately, and hitting that subscribe button genuinely helps more than you think. It takes 1 second, but it helps us keep making these stories for you. If you enjoy the content, stick with us. All right, let's get into it. At 4:40 p.m., I carried the last piece through the front door. At 4:41, my sister looked at her guests, then at me, and said 5 words that cost her everything she was standing on. So at 4:43, I placed a receipt on her kitchen counter. At 4:44, I walked out. At 7:15 the next morning, a flatbed truck reversed into her driveway. She was still in her robe when the movers knocked. Let me take you back. Vanessa closed on the house in March. A 3-bedroom in a neighborhood where people plant hydrangeas and wave from their driveways. She'd been talking about it for months. Mood boards, paint swatches, screenshots of kitchens from design accounts she followed. The day she got the keys, she posted a photo of herself standing in the empty living room with her arms spread wide, like she was measuring something invisible. The caption said, "Mine." I helped her move in, drove the truck because Greg, her husband, had a conference that weekend. Carried boxes up the front steps for 6 hours in the kind of heat that turns your shirt into a second skin. She ordered pizza. We ate it sitting on the floor of the kitchen because she didn't have a table yet. That was a decent day. The kind of day that makes you forget the math. 2 weeks later, the first text came. The living room was still empty. No couch, no dining table, no shelves. Just carpet and walls and a window that looked onto a backyard she hadn't mowed yet. I found a set at Caldwell's. Sectional, dining table, accent chairs, console. It's perfect. But I'm tapped out from the closing costs. Can you cover it? I'll pay you back in 60 days. I read it at my kitchen table. Opened my banking app. Checked the balance. The set was $9,214.67 after tax. I could cover it. Not comfortably. I'd have to skip the brake job on my car for another month and push a dental appointment I'd already pushed twice, but I could cover it. Before I sent the money, I screenshotted the conversation. Saved it in a folder on my phone. Not because I expected a problem, because I screenshot everything. Bank confirmations, lease terms, warranty emails. My cousin once called me paranoid. I told him I just don't like losing receipts. I transferred the money that afternoon. She replied with a string of heart emojis and, "You're the best. I owe you big time." I typed "no worries" and went back to the leak under my bathroom sink that I'd been ignoring because the plumber wanted $400 I just sent to Caldwell's. The second text came a week later. I was in a hardware store, buying caulk for a bathroom leak. I'm living the kind of life nobody in my family asks about. The delivery fee is separate, $380. You know I'm good for it. I paid it. Screenshotted that one too. Then the call came. Not from Vanessa. From my mother. "Your sister needs help getting the furniture into the house on Saturday," she said. "The delivery only covers curbside. She can't carry a sectional by herself. So she needs me to bring it inside. She just needs help with the setup. You won't even need to stay." I held the phone away from my ear for a second. Looked at it the way you look at a sentence you want to make sure you heard correctly. You won't even need to stay. Not, you should come to the party. Not, Vanessa wants you there. You won't even need to stay. As if staying were the concern. As if my presence required a disclaimer. "I'll be there," I said. That night, I went to the Caldwell's website. Not for the furniture, for the return policy. I read it the way I read everything. Line by line. Paragraph 6. Full retrieval within 30 days of delivery at buyer's discretion. No approval from delivery address required. I didn't highlight it. I didn't print it. I just knew it was there, the way you know where the fire extinguisher is. Not because you plan to use it, because you checked. On Thursday, Vanessa texted the delivery instructions. Not a request. Instructions. The kind of text that reads like a work order. Furniture arrives at the house Saturday at 2:30. I need you there by 3 to carry everything inside and set up the living room. Guests start arriving at 5. Photographer gets there at 4:45. I read the text twice, 3 times. Each time the same math. Arrive at 3. Photographer at 4:45. I'm guests at 5. That was a 2-hour window to unload a truck, carry $9,000 of furniture through a front door, position every piece where she wanted it, adjust it when she changed her mind, and disappear before the first guest walked in with a bottle of wine and the first photo was framed. She'd booked the photographer the same day she sent me the delivery instructions. I found this out later, but the timing says everything. The same afternoon she scheduled my arrival, she scheduled his. Same email chain, same calendar. My window and his window were plotted on the same timeline, back to back, with no overlap. She'd drawn a line between the part of the day that needed me and the part that didn't, and the line was a photographer's call time. I wasn't invited to a housewarming, I was given a shift. I didn't reply immediately, and I made dinner, ate it standing at the counter, washed the plate, put it on the rack. Then I picked up my phone and typed, "I'll be there." Before I sent it, I screenshotted the timing instructions and added them to the folder. Saturday. I pulled up to Vanessa's house at 4:30. 90 minutes late. Not on purpose. A pipe in my bathroom had started dripping again that morning, the same one I'd been ignoring since I sent the plumber money to Caldwell's instead. I spent 2 hours under the sink with a wrench and a flashlight before I realized I needed a part I didn't have. By the time I showered and loaded the rented dolly into my car, the afternoon was already half gone. The furniture had been sitting on the curb in Caldwell's shrink wrap since 2:30. Nobody had moved it. Vanessa hadn't called anyone else, hadn't asked Greg, hadn't hired help. She'd waited for me. Not because she trusted me more than anyone. Because I was the plan, and there was no plan B. There never is when I'm plan A. Inside, the house looked like a magazine had thrown up in the best possible way. Candles on the mantel, unlit but positioned at exact intervals. Flowers in glass vases on the kitchen island, white roses and eucalyptus, the kind of arrangement that costs more than my grocery budget. A playlist playing from a small speaker in the hallway, something acoustic and unhurried, the kind of music that tells you the host has opinions about atmosphere. The living room was empty. Bare walls, clean carpet, a photographer's tripod already set up in the corner, light stands flanking the window. Everything in the house was ready except the thing I was carrying. I started bringing pieces in. The sectional came in 3 parts, each one wrapped in plastic and cardboard. The first piece weighed enough that my shoulders burned by the time I cleared the front steps. I carried it through the front door sideways, scraping the frame, leaving a mark I'd hear about later if anyone bothered to notice who made it. Vanessa stood in the living room, pointing. That piece against the wall. The chaise faces the window. No, the other way. Actually, first way was right. I repositioned it. She tilted her head. Can you move it 6 inches to the left? It's blocking the sightline from the front door. I moved it. And the cushions. They're crooked. Fix those before you bring the next piece. I straightened the cushions on a couch I'd paid for while she checked something on her phone. She didn't help carry, didn't offer water. I didn't ask about the pipe or the drive or why I was 90 minutes late. She was directing traffic in a room I was building for her in real time, and the traffic was me. I went back for the second piece, then the third, then the dining table, which came in 2 parts and required me to get on my hands and knees on her carpet to align the base with the top. She stood over me while I tightened the bolts. Is that level? She asked. It's level. It doesn't look level. I checked it with my phone. Showed her the screen. It was level. She didn't apologize. She said, "Okay, now the accent chairs." The accent chairs. The console table. Each trip from the curb to the living room was about 40 feet. I made that walk 11 times. Nobody counted except me. I was carrying the dining table base through the front door when the first guests arrived. A woman in a linen dress stepped around me in the doorway, her wine bottle held high to avoid my shoulder. She smelled like perfume and didn't make eye contact. A man behind her paused to let me pass, the way you'd pause for someone carrying boxes in the lobby of an apartment building. A polite inconvenience. He walked in without a second look. From the living room, I heard someone say to Vanessa, "Oh, is that the delivery? Running a little late, huh?" Vanessa laughed. A real laugh. Not nervous. Not corrective. Just a laugh that said, "Yes, the help is behind schedule." She didn't say my name. Didn't say brother. Didn't say anything. I set the table base down in the dining room and went back for the top. When I passed through the living room, the photographer was adjusting a lens. He looked at me, unlooked at his shot list pinned to the kitchen corkboard, and looked away. Like he'd checked a face against a list and found it wasn't relevant. I caught a glimpse of the shot list as I passed. 12 planned shots. Living room wide angle, dining detail, backyard group, kitchen candid. Homeowner with guests. Vanessa plus Greg by fireplace. Friends on sectional. 12 shots. My name wasn't on the list. The word brother wasn't on it either. I carried the tabletop through the room while a guest asked Vanessa where she'd found the sectional. "Caldwell's," she said. "Their spring collection. Took forever to find the right one." She found it in a screenshot she sent me at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, with the caption, "This one. Can you order it tomorrow?" I picked the fabric. I placed the order. I have the confirmation email. But I kept carrying the table, because the table doesn't care who's lying about the couch. I was positioning the last piece, the sectional arm, when Vanessa crossed the room. She'd changed into a cream-colored jumpsuit sometime while I was hauling furniture through her front door. Her makeup was finished. Her hair was pulled back the way it looks in her photos, the kind of effortless that takes 45 minutes. She was holding a glass of something pale and fizzy and surveying the room the way a director surveys a set before the cameras roll. I was still holding the sectional arm. My shoulders burned from an hour of carrying. My shirt had a sweat line across the back in the shape of the door frame I'd been scraping past. My hands smelled like cardboard and shrink wrap and the metal of the rented dolly I'd loaded into my trunk that morning instead of calling a plumber. More guests were filtering in now. The living room was filling with voices and laughter and wine glasses catching the light. A woman near the kitchen was telling someone the furniture was stunning, seriously stunning. The photographer was checking angles, moving between the tripod and a handheld position near the window. The room looked exactly like Vanessa wanted it to look. Everything in position. The flowers, the candles, the playlist, the sectional, the dining set, the console, the accent chairs. All of it arranged by a man in a damp shirt who was still holding the last piece. Vanessa looked at the photographer, looked at the guests, looked at me. "Put it down and leave," she said. "Nobody wants you in the photos." Not whispered. Not pulled aside in a hallway. Said at the volume of someone giving instructions to a vendor who overstayed. 10 people were within earshot. A woman carrying a charcuterie plate stopped mid-step and stared at the floor. A man near the bookshelf adjusted his glasses and looked out the window at nothing. The photographer glanced at me, then at Vanessa, then at his light meter, making a calculation that had nothing to do with exposure. Greg was standing by the kitchen island, wine glass in his right hand, the same hand that shook mine 40 minutes ago at the front door. "Thanks, man," he'd said. "Place is gonna look amazing." That was before the room had an audience. Now the room had an audience, and Greg took a sip and looked at the floor tiles. And he studied them like they contained information. The handshake and the silence. 40 minutes apart. Same man. Same hand. Different room. Nobody corrected her. Nobody said, "That's her brother." Nobody said anything at all. The music kept playing. The candles on the mantel flickered from the draft coming through the open front door, the door I'd carried 11 loads through in the last hour. I set the sectional arm down. Placed it exactly where she'd pointed earlier. My hands finished the job before the rest of me caught up. Because that's how I'm built. You give me a task, I finish it. Even when the person who gave it to me is standing 3 feet away, telling me to disappear before the camera captures evidence that I was ever here. I straightened up, reached into my back pocket, took out the receipt. 3 pages, folded once. I'd been carrying it since I left my apartment that afternoon. I walked to the kitchen counter. Past Greg, who didn't look up. Past the photographer, who was already framing the living room. Past the guest with the charcuterie plate, who had found somewhere else to stand. Between a bowl of lemons and a stack of linen napkins, I set the receipt down. Flat, centered, 3 pages of itemized furniture. Sectional, $3,200. Dining set, $2,800. Console table, $1,400. 2 accent chairs, $1,100. Delivery, $380. Tax, $334.67. Total, $9,214.67. And on the last page, circled in pen the night before, paragraph 6 of the return policy. I didn't announce it, didn't explain, didn't look at Vanessa. I turned and walked to the front door. Stepped over the threshold I'd been carrying furniture through for the last hour. Pulled the door shut behind me. Not a slam, just a click. My car was parked at the curb. The rented dolly was still in the trunk. I sat behind the wheel and didn't start the engine. The living room was visible through the front window. I could see the sectional I'd carried in 3 pieces. The dining table I'd assembled on my hands and knees. Guests were sitting on furniture my bank account paid for, in a room I'd just been told to leave. Through the glass, it looked warm. Full. Someone was laughing. I took out my phone, opened the screenshot folder, the texts, the timing instructions, the mother's voicemail transcription, the delivery confirmation from Caldwell's. I scrolled through them, not reading, confirming they were there. The way you confirm a file is saved before you close the program. And then I opened my contacts and found the number for Caldwell's customer service. Marcus answered on the 3rd ring, professional, neutral. The voice of someone who processes 100 calls a day and doesn't carry any of them home. Caldwell's Furniture, this is Marcus. How can I help you? I'd like to schedule a return pickup. Sure thing. Can I get your order number? I read it off the confirmation in my folder. He pulled it up. I heard keys clicking. Okay, I've got the order. Full living room set. Delivered today at... He paused. At 2:30 p.m. You're calling about a return on the same day? Yes. All right. Any issue with the product? No, I just changed my mind. He didn't ask why. That's the thing about customer service. They process the request. They don't process the reason. He confirmed the return window. I had 29 days remaining. Full retrieval at buyer's discretion. No approval from delivery address required. When would you like the pickup? Tomorrow morning, earliest available. We can do 7:15 a.m. Will the buyer be present at the address? I'll be nearby. And the full set? Everything on the order? All of it. He read the address back, confirmed the time, gave me a reference number. The call lasted 4 minutes. When I hung up, the living room through the window was still glowing. Someone had turned on the string lights on the porch. Through the glass, I could see Vanessa talking to the photographer, gesturing at the room, adjusting a throw pillow on a couch she didn't pay for. I started the engine and drove home. That evening, I was in my apartment making pasta, sauce from a jar. Nothing that required attention. My phone lit up on the counter with a notification. Vanessa had posted 5 photos. The living room, wide angle, the sectional with throw pillows arranged in a pattern I didn't recognize, the dining table with candles and place settings, a group shot of guests posed in front of the window, and a close-up of the console table with flowers and a framed print. The caption, finally home. 47 likes in the first hour. Comments. Gorgeous. You did it, girl. That sectional is everything. So proud of you. My furniture, her caption, my money, her comments. I looked at the photos for a few seconds. Set the phone face down on the counter. Went back to the pasta. The sauce was starting to stick. I stirred it. Turned the heat down. Around 10 p.m., another notification. My mother. Hope today went okay. Your sister was so happy with how the house looked. You did a good thing. How the house looked. Not how the party went. Not how I was doing. Not, did Vanessa thank you? Or, was it heavy? Or, are you all right? How the house looked. The set. The staging. The product. She was thanking me for the room, not for being in it. I locked the phone, set it on the nightstand. Stared at the ceiling for a while. Didn't reply. The truck was scheduled for 7:15. My alarm was set for 6:30. Sunday morning. 6:58 a.m. I parked across the street from Vanessa's house. Engine off. Coffee from the gas station in the cup holder. Black. Too hot. The neighborhood was still. Sprinklers ticking on someone's lawn 2 houses down. A dog barking behind a fence. The kind of morning where you can hear a car turn onto the street 3 blocks away. At 7:12, the flatbed turned the corner. White cab. Caldwell's logo on the side panel in green and gray. It came down the street slowly, the kind of slow that means the driver is checking house numbers. Then it passed my car, swung wide, and reversed into Vanessa's driveway. The backup alarm beeped in the Sunday quiet. Steady. Measured. The sound of something arriving on schedule. 2 men stepped out. Work boots, moving blankets draped over their shoulders. One of them pulled 2 dollies from the truck bed and set them on the driveway. The other one walked to the front door, clipboard in hand, and knocked 3 times. Nothing happened for about 30 seconds. Then a light came on upstairs. I could see it through the bedroom window, yellow and sudden. Then the hallway light. Then the porch light, which flickered once before it held. The door opened. Vanessa, in a bathrobe, hair down, no makeup. The face people have when they're answering a door they didn't expect to answer. She looked at the 2 men, then at the truck in her driveway, then at the clipboard. "Ma'am, we're here for a scheduled retrieval, full living room set." The mover read the order number off the clipboard. Vanessa took the work order. Read it. Her lips moved slightly, the way they do when someone's processing information that doesn't match the morning they planned. Her mouth opened, closed. Then she looked past the movers, across the street, across the damp lawn, and saw my car. I didn't wave, didn't get out, didn't roll the window up or down. I was sitting with my coffee in the cup holder, window already cracked, watching the same front door I'd carried 11 loads through yesterday. The morning air smelled like cut grass and concrete. The movers went inside. They were efficient, professional, the kind of men who move furniture the way plumbers fix pipes. No emotion, just process. The sectional came out first, wrapped in blankets, angled through the doorway. Then the dining table, legs already removed, carried flat between them. Then the console. Then the 2 accent chairs, one under each arm of the taller mover. Piece by piece, the living room emptied. Each item crossed the threshold, rolled down the driveway on a dolly, and loaded onto the flatbed. Through the open front door, I could hear Vanessa following them from room to room. "Wait, stop. This is my furniture. You can't just come in here and take it." "Ma'am, the retrieval was authorized by the account holder." "I am the account holder. This is my house." The mover stopped, checked the clipboard, looked at the work order. "The account is registered under a different name, ma'am." He read it. "My name." She stared at him. The kind of stare that happens when the ground you've been standing on turns out to be someone else's floor and the someone else is parked across the street drinking gas station coffee. Vanessa went inside, came back 30 seconds later with her phone already at her ear. She paced the porch while the movers continued loading, her bathrobe belt trailing behind her on the concrete. I couldn't hear Marcus's side, but I could hear hers. "Hi, yes, there are men at my house taking my furniture. There's been some kind of mistake." A pause. She gave the order number from the work order. "That's right. The sectional, the dining set, the console table. It was delivered yesterday. I don't understand why there's a retrieval order." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you mean, the account holder authorized it?" "I'm the account holder. This is my address. The furniture is in my living room." "Well, it was in my living room." Marcus said something. Her expression shifted. The anger loosened into something less certain. No, that can't be right. Can I speak to a manager?" She went inside. The door closed. I could see her shadow moving past the living room window, pacing, phone pressed to her ear. The movers loaded the last accent chair onto the flatbed and began strapping everything down. She came back out 5 minutes later. The phone was at her side. Her face had a different shape now. Not angry, not confused. Something between the two that doesn't have a clean name. I'm the look of someone who just learned that the room they've been standing in was never theirs to stand in. The movers pulled out of the driveway at 7:38. The flatbed made a wide turn at the end of the street, and the Caldwell's logo on the side panel caught the early sun for a second before it disappeared around the corner. Vanessa stood on the porch and watched it go. Then she went inside and called our mother. Mom called me 11 minutes later. I was still parked across the street. The flatbed had just turned the corner. Vanessa's driveway was empty. The porch light was still on. "What did you do?" Mom's voice was tight. Not crying? Not yet. The voice she uses when she's decided who's wrong before the conversation starts. "I returned furniture I purchased." "Nathan, she's hysterical. The living room is empty. She had 30 people there last night. Do you understand what you've done?" "I do. I carried the furniture in for those 30 people, 11 trips from the curb to the living room. Then Vanessa looked at me in front of 10 of those people and told me to leave before the photos. She didn't mean it like that. She said, 'Nobody wants you in the photos.' How many ways can that mean something, Mom?" She was stressed. You know how she gets. The house, the guests, the photographer. She was overwhelmed. She wasn't overwhelmed when she was pointing at where the chaise goes. She wasn't overwhelmed when she told a guest she picked the furniture herself at Caldwell's spring sale. She was specific, and she was calm, and she was performing. The only thing that overwhelmed her was me still being in the room when the camera showed up. Mom went quiet. I could hear Vanessa in the background, crying, a door opening and closing. Then Mom said it. The sentence she didn't hear herself say. "She just needed you for the setup, Nathan. She wasn't trying to exclude you from the actual party. You know how she gets before these things. Everything has to look a certain way." The actual party. The setup and the actual party. Two different events. One I was scheduled for. One I wasn't. And my mother had just separated them out loud, on the phone, as if the distinction were obvious. As if it had always been the arrangement. As if everyone knew except the person doing the carrying. I sat with that word for 4 seconds. Actual. The word that split my sister's housewarming into the part that needed me and the part that didn't want me. "Mom," I said, "if there was a setup and an actual party, which one was I invited to?" She didn't answer. Because Vanessa scheduled me before the guests, before the camera. She gave me a 2-hour window to carry, set up, and disappear. And you helped coordinate that. You called me and said, "You won't even need to stay." Those were your words. I was just trying to help her, Nathan. I didn't think... You didn't think what? That I'd notice? That I'd hear the word actual and understand what it means? She started crying. Not the loud kind. The kind that leaks. The kind that happens when someone hears themselves quoted back and recognizes the shape of what they said. "So I'm asking you, Mom, how did you know I wasn't supposed to be at the party?" Nothing. Just Vanessa's voice in the background getting louder and my mother breathing through her nose on the other end of the phone. I waited 3 more seconds. Then I said, "The furniture is back at Caldwell's. The refund will process by Monday. If Vanessa wants a living room, she can buy one." I hung up, set the phone on the passenger seat, finished my coffee, started the engine, drove to a diner 4 blocks away and ordered eggs. Vanessa called me 3 times Sunday afternoon. I let each one ring through. Each time the phone vibrated on my kitchen counter and I looked at her name and went back to whatever I was doing. Folding laundry, cleaning the stovetop, reorganizing a shelf that didn't need reorganizing. The calls came at 1:15, 2:40, and 4:12. I remember the times because my phone logs them and I check my phone the way I check everything. She texted at 4:12, right after the 3rd missed call. "You had no right to do that." I read it. Didn't reply. At 6:30 p.m. "That was a gift. You can't take back a gift." The screenshots in my folder said otherwise. "I'll pay you back in 60 days. You know I'm good for it." Those aren't gift language. That's loan language dressed up in family clothes. I didn't reply. Monday morning. "I'm calling a lawyer." I almost typed something back. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for about 2 seconds. I could feel the shape of a sentence forming. Something short. Something she wouldn't be able to argue with. But the thing about responding is that it opens a thread. And threads can be pulled. And pulled threads become conversations. And conversations become negotiations. And negotiations mean I'm back in a room I already left. So I locked the phone, set it on the counter, and made coffee. Mom called Monday afternoon. I let it ring. She left a voicemail I didn't listen to. Not out of cruelty, out of math. There was nothing in that voicemail that would add information I didn't already have. Greg called Tuesday evening. His name on my screen looked unfamiliar there, like a word in a language you studied once and mostly forgot. I let it ring too. He didn't leave a voicemail. Some people know when a ringing phone is an answer. By Wednesday, Vanessa's post was still up. Finally home. The photos showed a living room full of furniture that was now sitting in a Caldwell's warehouse on the other side of town. The sectional, the dining set, on the console table with flowers and a framed print. All of it tagged, liked, commented on, and no longer within 40 miles of her house. Someone noticed. A comment on the post. Wait, did you rearrange? I thought the couch was against the other wall, lol. Maybe a neighbor who'd driven past? Maybe a guest who'd seen something through the window. Vanessa didn't reply. She deleted the post that night. But screenshots had already been taken by people who take screenshots, and posts aren't like furniture. You can't put them on a truck and send them back to the warehouse. They live in other people's phones now. On Thursday, Vanessa found the receipt. I know this because she texted me a photo of it. The 3 pages spread on her counter. The circled return clause visible in pen. Her message, "You planned this." She was half right. I'd circled the clause Friday night, the night before the housewarming. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee at 11 p.m., reading paragraph 6 the way I read every paragraph of every agreement I've ever signed. Not because I planned to use it, because I read terms. But when someone tells you, nobody wants you in the photos, while you're standing in a room full of furniture you paid for, in a house full of guests who think your sister bought it, the clause stops being a precaution and becomes an exit door you already know the location of. I didn't reply to the photo. The receipt was the reply. It had been sitting on her counter for 5 days between the lemons and the napkins, and she'd walked past it every morning until the room got empty enough for 3 pages of paper to matter. Monday, the refund processed. $9,214.67 returned to my account. I saw the notification while eating a sandwich at my desk during lunch. Green text, amount credited. I closed the app and finished the sandwich. The brake job on my car was overdue. The dental appointment needed rescheduling. The plumber still hadn't been called about the pipe. All of it could happen now. The money was back where it started, in the account of the person whose name was on it. The following Wednesday, 2 weeks after the housewarming, I was at my desk mid-afternoon going through invoices for a client project. My phone buzzed once. I glanced at the screen between spreadsheet tabs. Vanessa. Are you serious right now? I looked at the message for a moment. 5 words. No question mark would have made it a different sentence. The question mark made it an accusation shaped like a question, all the kind of text that expects you to defend yourself, to explain, to open the thread so she can pull it. I set the phone face down on the desk, finished the invoice I was working on, sent it, started the next one. At 5:30, I packed up, drove home, and made dinner. Rice and chicken and peppers. The same thing I make when I don't have the energy to decide. The phone stayed in my jacket pocket through the meal. I ate standing at the counter, washed the plate, dried the pan, hung it on the hook above the stove. Later, sitting on the couch with the TV on, I took the phone out. Her message was still there. Are you serious right now? Still on read, still unanswered. I looked at it the way I'd look at a bill I'd already paid. The account was settled. The balance was 0. There was nothing left to transact. I locked the screen and watched something about cars until I fell asleep. 5 weeks later, I was at a rooftop bar downtown. Nothing fancy. String lights and plastic chairs and a view of a parking garage that somehow looked decent after dark. Nate and his wife, Lauren. And a woman named Priya, who I'd been seeing for about 3 weeks. She worked in logistics, found puns physically painful, and had a habit of stealing the olive from my drink before I noticed it was gone. The evening was warm. Nate was telling a story about a client who'd locked himself out of his own warehouse and had to climb in through a bathroom window in a suit. Lauren was shaking her head. Priya was laughing with her whole face, the kind of laugh where your eyes close for a second. I was sitting at the table, a drink in my hand. Nobody had asked me to carry anything. Nobody had given me a time window. Nobody had checked a shot list to see if I belonged in the frame. Lauren held up her phone. Photo, everyone get in. We squeezed together at the railing. Nate made a face that ruined the first shot. Lauren told him to act like an adult for 3 seconds. He said that was a big ask. We took another one. She showed it to the group. That one's good. I looked at it. 4 people on a cheap rooftop with bad lighting and $12 wine. Nate's arm around Lauren. Priya leaning into my shoulder, her hand resting on my arm like it had been there all night. Me on the left side of the frame, not at the edge, not cropped, not behind furniture, not carrying anything. Mid-laugh, a drink in my hand, someone's shoulder touching mine. Nobody had told me to leave before the photo was taken. Nobody had looked at me and calculated whether my face matched the aesthetic. Nobody had scheduled my presence and then scheduled my removal. I was just in the frame, because the people in it wanted me there. I screenshotted the photo, set it as my lock screen. Not to prove anything to anyone, just because it was a good photo, and I was in it.